All right, hello students. In class we talked about real numbers, and what we found was that real numbers were broken off into two categories. Into the rational numbers, which is this big rectangle right here that's green, and this yellow rectangle, which is the irrational numbers. Now, irrational numbers are going to be those numbers that go on and on and on and they never repeat themselves. So for example, pi, which is 3.14, and it continues, or this number right here, 1.2348997, goes on and it just keeps on repeating itself. Irrational. Now, rational numbers are going to be those numbers that are fractions that terminate, or like 0 or 0.3, there's nothing after that 3, or numbers that repeat themselves, so 1.2727277, and it just goes on, or 0.33333, they repeat themselves. Okay, so they would be rational numbers, or integers, that means negative. So that would be your rational numbers. Within the rational numbers, you can subclassify into just the integers, which gets rid of all the fractions and gets rid of all the decimals. And you just have all your negative numbers like -2, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. Or you can just talk about the whole numbers, which gets rid of all the negative integers, and you're left with just 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you can just talk about natural numbers, which is starts at 1, 1, 2, 3. And this would be the subsets for all the real numbers. We also talked about the properties of real numbers. So for example, um, for addition and multiplication, sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're different. So we have a commutative property which says that a plus b is the same thing as b plus a. Let's just put numbers in here. 5 plus 3 is the same thing as 3 plus 5. Or 5 times 3 is the same thing as 3 times 5. Right? So it doesn't matter which one you put first, because the commutative property of addition or multiplication say that you're going to get the same thing. The associative property of addition says that if you're adding three numbers, it doesn't matter if you add the first two and then add the third one, or if you add the last two and then add the first one. So let's do an example. 1 plus 2 plus 3. You can do 1 plus 2, which is 3, and then add the 3, which will give you 6. Or this is the 1, that's the 2 and the 3. You can add the 2 and the 3, which will give you 5, and then add the 1, which will give you 6. It's the same thing. So if you're adding all three of them, it doesn't matter how you group them or how you associate them. Same thing for multiplication. 1 times 2 times 3 is the same thing as 1 times 2 times 3. It doesn't matter which order you multiply them. Identity. For addition, if you add 0, you stay the same. For multiplication, if you multiply by 1, you stay the same. Inverse property of addition says that if you add the negative version of that number, you're going to get 0. And for multiplication, if you multiply 1 over the number, you're going to get 1. And distributive property says that A times a quantity of B plus C is A times the B plus A times the C. Okay. See what else we have here. I think the video is paused. See what else I need to talk about. All right, I also wanted to talk about order of operations and properties of real numbers. Things that you need to remember is when we say parentheses, we're talking about anything that's grouped. That includes things above or below a fraction bar. Exponents, it would be power. This includes square roots, because the square root is something raised to a 1/2. Multiplication, this includes the distributive property, which we've done practice in class. Some items can be grouped. Multiplication and division, you go from left to right. Addition and subtraction, we go from left to right. So it looks like this, parentheses, and of course you know this as PEMDAS. Here's an example. What do we do first? This is assuming that you're doing it without a calculator. So what you would do is the one in parentheses first. So 3 minus 1 would be a 2. So everything stays the same, but inside the parentheses it would be a 2. What do we do next? We do the exponents next. So 2 to the third, which would be an 8. Everything stayed the same. The only thing is you rewrote 2 to the third as an 8. right? And then now what do? Well, we know that it's multiplication division from left to right. So do you do the division or do you do the multiplication? Well, which one came first? The division comes first. So 16 divided by 4 is 8. I'm sorry, 4. 16 divided by 4 is 4. That would be this 4 right here. That's the 16 divided by the 4. The 8 stays the same. Minus 22 divided by 11. All that stays the same. Now you need to choose. Division has to be done first before you do the subtraction. All right, so 22. Oh, yeah, you're right, but this is multiplication. My bad, my bad. 4 times 8 is 32. Now we do the division first. Before we do that subtraction, 22 divided by 11 is 2. And 32 minus 2 would be 30. See? All right, let's do another sample problem. Hopefully I won't mess up on this one. So when you look at this, you have this division, this fraction bar over here. So you have to take care of the entire numerator first before we do that. So we got to do the parentheses first. 2 plus 3 would be a 5. The 3 stays the same, right? The square is still there, and then minus 65. The only thing you changed was 2 plus 3 is that 5. And now we would do the exponent, so the 5 squared. Everything should stay the same. So 3 times 5 squared is 25 minus 65, everything over 2. Now remember, this whole thing is basically a grouping on top of this fraction bar, so you have to take care of this. So before the subtraction, you have to do this multiplication. That would be the 75 minus the 65. And yes, remember, this is a group, so you have to take care of the group first. So you got to knock this part out, and then you divide by 2. Okay? So here you go, PEMDAS or GEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. But remember, multiplication and division, they have the same hierarchy. It just goes from left to right. So you can do division and then multiplication as long as it's from left to right. All right, please remember this. Oh, and also, if you did not get this information in class, please make sure that you rewatch this video and that you're taking notes and that you're writing down some of the examples. Remember, you are expected to